So, welcome. A viewer came to me, JJ Sunshine. He often chats and hangs out, and he came to me and he one. I think it was, I don't know what it was, but it was in a chat one video, and he's like, "Oh my god, I am so angry!" And I'm like, "Dude, why are you so angry?" And he's like, "I just watched Argylle." He's like, "I just watched Argylle, and I am so angry." And for some reason, after that night, and I was laughing because this is pretty funny actually. After that night, I want to say badgered me. That's sort of a harsh word, but he kept poking me. Oh my god, dude, you've got to watch Argylle. You've got to watch Argylle. You've got to watch Argylle and tell me what you think. And I'm like, I don't watch. I mean, I don't watch a lot of movies. I don't watch a lot of. I watch some TV, but I don't watch a ton of movies. Um, but I broke down and watched Argylle, and okay. So let's understand something. I watched Argylle. I have notes. I have pages of notes on flippin' Argylle. So hope you appreciate this, JJ. Let's see how this went. First scene in Argylle has our titular character Argylle, played by Henry Cavill, in North his North Korean dictator jacket and his Johnny Bravo hair. Um, he's there with Wyatt, who's John Cena, and Kira, who lasts like this long, to press a button and die. Those are her two purposes in the flick so far. Um, they're there to capture Dua Lipa, which is Lagrange, which is the terrorist. And so he approaches her in the club. Of course, she's guarded, but she stands up and walks out, and they go out to the dance floor, of course. And they start to dance a little bit. And right, it's a send up of the James Bond cold opens right, where James Bond is in the middle of, an adventure or at the end of an adventure. And it's right at the end, and he is going to do some over the top action, and the women will fall all over him, and he's going to win the day in like the first 5 minutes of the movie. And then you're going to get the theme, right? The right, and you're going to get the James Bond theme. That's sort of the send up of that. I feel that was the point. So we start in the club. They're dancing. When I think she says, but maybe he does. I forget exactly. And I thought it was a little awkward because I'm like, what the hell is that? And I could be wrong. So one of them says to the other, "Do you whirly bird?" I'm like, that's okay. No. But of course, well, yes, of course I do. And the Whirlybird is a dance, but not really. Dua Lipa does her sultry, right? Lagrange does her sultry sort of first move there and then leaps up. Henry catches her. Her legs are spread wide. Everything is about at a critical eye level. And I was like, whoa. And I think I saw that on a trailer or an ad. I think I saw that dance. And I thought it was goofy, of course, when you saw it there. In context, weirdly, it is not less awkward. It's a little more awkward, even more awkward because it's named, like they gave it a name, the Whirly Bird. I'm like, I'm looking, going, I just feel dirty. I'm not sure what I'm watching. And it's spinning around, and he's FaceTiming the Golden Gate, and I'm like, okay, whatever. It's over the top, it's silly, and it's over the top, and that's sort of the vibe of that the movie was going for, I assume. And I'm like, so, and I thought it was like I said, it was a little awkward, and it was a little awkward because I thought, I even wrote down, what the frick is the whirly bird? Why does it have a name? Is it an actual dance? Is it a skating move or something? It looks like something you would do in like a figure skating competition, but I don't think it is. I looked it up. I have not yet found it. If someone finds it, tell me. Um, And I thought it would have been funnier had they just done it without warning instead of making this contrived. It was almost contrived, you whirly bird. Sure. That's the only answer to that is maybe. Um, because I thought if you're going to do a send up of like a Bond thing, and this is the send up of the trope that any woman in 5 minutes, regardless of her ideology, political upbringing, right, her penchant for evil, current love interest will immediately give it up for Bond in minutes, right? And um, that's just sort of the spiel. Villain, hero, whatever it is, everyone is just tripping over themselves to do James Bond. And I sort of vaguely felt that that was gonna be where they were going with this, like that's the send up, and in that context, the awkward lewd dance sort of worked, and I thought it would have worked better had they just surprised, like they're doing the dance and it's getting sexier and sexier, and all of a sudden she just jumps up and assumes the position, as it were, like that in sort of a weird, over the top. I thought that would have been actually sort of a thing. I was like, oh, that would have been funny, but they weirdly having set it up with the name. I thought it was a little less, but the reason they did it was when he put her down, she goes, "Oh, well, I know that you're here to capture me and not my heart." And then she goes, right, she's gonna have her men kill him, and she's like, "I suppose the whirly bird does not always catch the worm." And then she leaves, and I'm like, oh, they did it for the dad joke. That whole thing, that whole contrived sort of setup was just for that line. They set that whole thing up to do that line. Now I appreciate a big setup for sort of a bad pun, I think. But I was like, oh god, I think I hate this. So she goes and leaves. He's surrounded by assassins, and they're going to kill him. And so he calls on Kira, the tech gal, and she's like, she says something sort of vaguely because he's like Kira, and the bad guys are like, who the hell's Kira? And she goes, she theoretically can hear them because she goes, I don't know what she said actually. Um, something akin to, I'm the woman who gave up her, you know, fully tenured position at MIT to save his ass. I don't know what she said, but it was some, pseudo badass. Now Kira's here for like 2 minutes. She's going to get shot and killed instantly. She presses a button and smoke comes out of the ceiling. So I assume I don't know. I don't know many clubs have. I mean, ice. Maybe then it's dry ice. I have no idea. Presumably, this club has smoke generators, and she tapped into those, or they just installed them. Actually, I always wondered shit like that, where you're like, well, if you can do that, why don't you just make him a little remote to do the thing so he can press the button, if he needs it in case you've been killed or compromised already. But whatever. That's too much. That's too much of that, for this movie. So he's going to escape. In the mean, there's Lagrange is waiting for them outside on a motorcycle with a submachine gun. He lays into them. They fire, like they hide behind the car doors or whatever. In the meantime, Kira's hit through the heart, killed. Argylle's trying to save her, but is then ordered onward by the boss, as it were. And so he goes and finds a golf cart kind of thing, and he tries to chase her in the cart. And I forget how he's on the roofs of the building, but he can't get to her. You know, and so there's this whole chase, and it's this whole thing. Like at one point, it's totally CGI. Like it's very CGI. It's sort of obvious that there's not a practical effect to be found. At one point, he is using the golf cart thing like a skateboard, and it is rail sliding down a staircase. In another, he's on the roofs of buildings above her. She's in an alley, and he is straddling the two roofs on either side with the wheels. And I'm like, wow, none of that is makes any sense. Again, it's sort of over the top action, right? Theoretically, it's an exciting chase scene. And he slams this golf cart down. The wheels come off. He calls his associate Wyatt. He says, Wyatt, she's coming your way. Wyatt is sipping tea or something and decides, yeah, he's had enough of this. He stands up and just plucks her off the bike as she passes. Done. At the end of that, they're interrogating Lagrange. Who sent you? Who told you we were coming? And so she tells them, and it just so happens to be their employer. So their employer set them up. You know, they're both working for the same evil or whatever organization. And they're like, cut the feed. We've got to go off the grid, blah, blah, blah. Right. In the meantime, Lagrange, Dua Lipa has done two things. One, she has fired her agent. And two, she has taken a cyanide gel or something and, put it on while these guys are busy, and she kills herself. And I wonder, I always wonder why, because again, it's giving a little too much thought probably to this opening scene in this movie, but at that point in time, she had as much chance to escape capture / punishment ever. The group that wanted her captured is the same group she was working for. You've already given up the information to these two. That the group is going to kill you, the bad guy group, right? But it also theoretically wants to kill them. They are talking actively about going off the grid. At that point in time, you could bust out with, look, guys, you got bigger problems. I have a safe house. Let's hole up there. You just don't turn me in this time. And we'll part ways. Done. You're not going to turn me over to the good guys anyway. You're going to turn me over to the bad guys. I mean, she could have, I think, that was one where I go, you could have easily escaped. Like, there was no reason to off yourself at that point. It was a bad use of the cyanide agent trope, I thought, because I thought, yeah, she had a perfect opportunity. Now, what I realize now, after having watched 2 hours and 12 minutes or something of this, is that she actually killed herself, so she didn't have to watch the rest of it. So, so my mother hated James Bond movies. She was, very much a, feminist, still to this day is. So she hated the whole Bond girl trope that pervaded those films, and it was very sexist sort of thing. I mean, it was 60s and early 70s for sure, and Bond was a man's man, and that whole thing. It never stopped me from watching them. It just stopped me from being permitted to watch them. So I would, slide off to a theater, or you could catch them sometimes on TV late at night or whatever, right? And I would still catch them. And the opener here reminded me of the openings in a Bond flick, right? As I said earlier. But in the Bond flicks, even though you knew it was going to happen, you knew he was going to win. It was the first 10 minutes of the movie. He's not going to lose. That would have been a nice twist for him to lose and get caught. But he's going to win. So why were those exciting, right? You still wanted to see what was going to happen. There was still an element of danger. There was still an element of suspense, perhaps, or at least, wow, that was cool. He jumped out of the plane and immediately was skiing, and he's being chased by dudes with snowmobiles, and they're shooting submachine guns and that whole thing, right? There's just that whole super cool vibe that Argylle lacked entirely. I don't know what it was, but everything about the gunfight, the chase scene, the sultry dance, everything about it fell entirely flat. The first scene in Argylle set the tone for the entire movie, and the tone was boring. It was dull. It literally it did the made the cardinal sin of of entertainment media, of movie. It was just dull, and I can't tell you exactly why. I can't individually critique. I think CGI has something to do with some of it, right? That I think the author and the director of the film maybe mistook over the topness for excitement. And I think a lot of modern movies sort of do. Like, if we just make a spectacle of this, if he's rail sliding the car down a thing, then that must be funny because you can't do that, right? Ha ha ha. And if he's straddling the buildings, then that must be cool because that's impossible. And that's not what makes things cool. In fact, it was a lot cooler when they were doing an honest to God chase on snowmobiles with practical effects with stunt people because that was possible and it was sort of dangerous. And I just think this scene lacked all of that. There was nothing to latch onto here. Um, I got nothing from anything out of this. It was actually a very empty scene. I think that set the tone, and that's where I was like, oh, it's going to be a long ride. If that's the first 10 minutes, I've got another 2 hours of this, and I am afraid. So I think that's sort of where I ended up. And I thought so. The other thing that I thought was very telling was that whole, and I know I'm back to the stupid dance with the legs and the whole thing. That obviously left an impression on me. I'm back to, but I thought that setup for the dad joke was they took something that could have been surprising. They showed it all in the trailers, which is a modern sin as well of movies. But they took something that could have been surprising and probably a little bit funny at that point and over explained it and made it unfunny. I get they wanted to do the pun, and I sort of get it, but it ultimately fell flat. I'm sure someone thought it was funny, and maybe I'm just a curmudgeon, but that's what sort of happened for me. As I was like, oh yeah, that I get it. That's what this was all about. So that whole setup was just for that. So there was this whole setup, and the payoff was and that is unfortunately going to set the tone for I think a lot of parts of the next 2 hours. So so let's. I'm not going to go over every scene in detail, but I do want to get to at least up through maybe the train scene. I do want to do the train, so we'll talk about that in a moment. So the ending of the opener adventure, you fade to the writer Ellie Conway. She's reading the fourth book of her Argylle series to a bunch of adoring fans at a bookstore. So you realize, hey, Argylle, Wyatt, Kylie, all fiction. This is all in her head. And these are just books. Done. Okay, that's cool. I can sort of get behind the reality and fantasy sort of commingling together idea. So I go from bored to maybe I'm on board, right? Let's see where this goes. Fine. And one thing I will give the authors credit for, the writers credit for, is that pretty much they use Chekhov's gun very well. In that everything that you see, every beat that you catch at the end is foreshadowed by something you saw at the beginning. Everything you see at the beginning is going to come back around sometime later in the story. I will give Jason Fuchs, the writer, a credit for that. One example, a simple example, would be that the first one of the young ladies in the crowd goes to Ellie and she asks her, "Hey, I want to be a writer too, but I can't find the time." And Ellie goes, "Well, I didn't actually start writing in earnest until my skating accident." And you go, "Oh, okay, she had a skating accident. Whatever." But nope, that's going to come around later. Now, is the payoff worth it? Hell no. But it does come around later, and they do make good use of those beats that mirror something that you saw before. So again, kudos for that. What I cringed a little at in the bookstore scene was the next guy. The next guy stands up and he is like, you're the spy author that spies read. You predicted global events. How do you do it? Other writers like Fleming and Forsyth and Le Carre, they were all spies. Is that how you do it? And I was like, wow, you totally name dropped. Did you just name drop in Argylle? Did you mention probably, one of the, if not the most best Cold War hardcore spy novelists of not our time, anytime. The Cold War's over. You're not going to get more novels of that ilk because that's all over. There is no East Germany for the spy to come out, to come out of the cold into. There's no, so did we just name drop John Le Carre in Argylle? I just saw a whirlybird, and you were, oh God, I did. I cringed. I actually was like, oh, that hurts me just a little. I'm not a purist. Yes, but oh God, what are you doing? Okay. All right. Anyway, it's water under the bridge. You went there. That's why I named this Tinker Tailor Soldier Y. Shots fired, Mr. Fuchs. Shots fired. No. So yeah, Ellie has to write her 5th book. She has writer's block. She's going to go home and write the book. She goes home. She writes the book. That book ends. She goes to her cabin or whatever and writes the book. And that book ends with he hires a hacker, and the hacker's agent comes to him and hands him a phone and says, Bakunin will contact you once you get to London on this phone. Done. And so she's like, great, done. Cliffhanger. Bam. Check. Signed, sealed, delivered. Her mom reads the book. She must have sent it to mom. And mom calls the next morning and goes, oh, I loved your book, honey. Except the ending was a cop-out. Stop it. So in true mother fashion, she's like, I love the book. It was wonderful, but it sucked. And you need to write another chapter. You need to get that, resolve that crap. What's going on with you? And so Ellie tries, but she can't do it. And so she's like, Mom, I just can't do this. And Mom's like, well, why don't we meet up? Take a train to Chicago. We'll meet up and I'll help you write the book. I'm like, okay, that's a little odd, but sure, you help her write the book. I think if I'm Ellie and my mother was like, yeah, your last chapter sucked. You need to. I'd be like, Mom, I'm a best-selling author, for crying out loud. What? Okay. That's all. I just think that was a funny moment there where I was like, man, she just like, sure, Mom, help me write the book. So on the way to Chicago to meet her mother, she's on a train, and there's going to be a fight scene on the train. She effectively meets Aiden, which I called him at this point Beardy because I didn't know he was going to shave. And in just the next scene, it's Sam Rockwell, is Agent Aiden. Agent Aiden shows up, tells her, hey, you're that clever author lady, and all these guys are spies and they're going to kill you, and I'm going to save you. And there's a giant fight scene. Now, I found the fight scene again was still a little dull. It had music over it. It had jumpy cuts. I don't know. I just didn't find any of the fights or any of the action in the movie compelling at all. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. The only thing I will say is the reason why this one particularly got mentioned was the fact that, I mean, it was fine. The fight choreography is fine. Right? They're fighting. It's like every other fight you've ever seen in any action movie, except they do this thing where Agent Aiden continuously has to turn away and go to Ellie and say stuff, and then he gets gang tackled or blindsided by one of the bad guys, and then he beats them up, and then he goes immediately and looks away and turns to Ellie and does a thing and gets blindsided again, and then he beats him up, and then he turns to Ellie and says a thing, and then he gets blindsided again, and that goes on 6 or 7. I had to go count. That goes on 6 or 7 times. It goes on forever. So that was definitely a fight scene which could have been way shorter, and the joke was barely good once, and about the 6th or 7th time it really did run its course. But Aiden saves her and pretty much gives her the whole spiel in a set of scenes, which we're not going to go over, but I'll go over the whole spiel, right? And the spiel is that Aiden Sam Rockwell is an agent. He worked for the evil division. He's trying to break the division now, and he hired a hacker named what's his name? Oh, I'll get it in a minute. So he hires the magical hacker to get the data on the division. The hacker puts the information, the master drive, in a silver bullet casing, and told him to meet him in Hyde Park. He sent him a phone, said meet me in Hyde Park, and he never showed. Now, both Aiden and the division, the evil guy, which is Bryan Cranston, is the evil boss. They're both trying to get Ellie using her magical spy sense, because what the fan said is true. She does seem to know things before they're going to happen, or she knows secrets that she should never know, and so she obviously has something, right, going on where she can tell them where the hacker is. Darn it, I had the hacker's name somewhere, but I presumably did not write it down. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter. He's the hacker. He's dead anyway. Not a big deal. But yeah, so that's what he tells her. He tells her, hey, so I'm going to get you to write this 5th book, so get to it, or this last chapter. And she's like, that's not how it works. And he's like, no, it's got to work like that. And so they go to Hyde Park, where where Aiden was supposed to meet the hacker in hopes to get Ellie to jog her creative juices in such that she will write this last chapter and tell him where he can find the hacker or the master drive, whatever. And we'll get to that in a minute. It's Bakunin. I remember the name of the hacker. The name of the hacker is Bakunin. That I didn't even go look that up. I just remembered it. It took me a day. Thank you, cognitive decline. Okay. They're in Hyde Park. Aiden and Ellie go to Hyde Park. Remember, Bakunin gave him the phone, told him to meet him in Hyde Park, never showed. So now Aiden is asking Ellie to use her magical spy sense to figure out what the hell happened to Bakunin, and so on. So she sort of does right. In the meantime, Bryan Cranston and the bad guys have honed in on them using the fact that Ellie's fans are live streaming her. And of course, if you've ever watched any detective show set in Britain, the UK, you know they have so much CCTV there that it's impossible to not be on video, and they are. and the evil guys tap into that, and so now they are also trying to either figure out what Ellie knows, blah blah blah, the whole thing, right? So they're racing to do the National Treasure Da Vinci Code BS to figure out where Bakunin is. Ellie does sort of a flashbacky thing. She goes, Argylle and Wyatt realize that the phone has a chip in it, and it's a decryptor chip, and that was the point. But of course, Aiden's throwing the phone away in the meantime. If I remember, I'll tell you why I think this all sort of falls apart once the reveal happens. I'm going to write that down. This all falls apart. But I'm not going to pre-reveal the reveal. Come on, guys. So the phone had a decryptor chip in it, but Aiden's thrown the phone away, so he doesn't have it anymore. So Ellie can't see the chip. So they go, well, if we were to want to decrypt that message, we would need a dissect satellite dish. Sure. Okay, fine. So they then find the database of all the satellite dishes, and lo and behold, one of them's nearby. They go to the apartment. That's Bakunin's apartment. Done. Of course, the bad guys are now going to chase them down, and they're also going and getting all units, blah, blah, blah. They're right, the whole thing. So black vans carrying a bunch of dudes wearing black ski masks and guns and blah, are heading to Ellie and Aiden as they search Bakunin's apartment. Okay, this is where I started to lose all hope. Because so they used a writing trope that I absolutely hate. So in the apartment, Ellie's like looking around and she's searching, and she's like, okay, let me think what's going on here. Aiden, in the meantime, so she's actually getting into her role now as, spy sense girl, which was, that's like a D-list character in Marvel, spy sense girl. Less powerful than Squirrel Girl, though, 100%. If you can say Squirrel Girl's name 6 times fast. So Ellie is in the apartment, and she's like, let me think about what's going on. And Aiden's like, oh, man, this place is a dump. Bakunin couldn't have lived here. Let's go. It's like, she's like, no, just give me some time. Look, there's wallpaper on brick. Isn't that weird? And he's like, yeah, they had bad taste. Let's go. And she's like, look, there's stuff here. There was a wire here, and something was attached here. There's plaster. He's like, yeah, it's spackle. Let's go. I'm like, oh my God, I hate that. I hate that trope. I hate it. You just convinced her that she had magical spy sense or whatever. You presumably believed her up till now. Now that she's actually doing what you wanted, you now pull the, well, this is dumb, let's get out of here card. I hate, that is a dumb trope. You convinced her to come here. You, like if there was no building there, if there was an old lady with 20 cats there, if there's a lot of things you might have said, oh, you must have been wrong. But if she's wrong, your whole premise goes out the window. So you think you'd give her a little bit of time to figure out the frickin' spy shit that you brought her here to figure out, as opposed to immediately discounting, oh, yeah, this place doesn't look like it's it. You must have been wrong. And my whole theory is blown out of the water. Let's just end the flippin' movie right here, which would have been a good decision. But instead, you keep badgering her to leave. I hate that trope. I cannot, and I know I'm going on and on about it. Oh, I just flippin' hate it. I hate it. Because it makes no sense. Now, I went from I hate this trope to I'm angry at the writers of the film or the reason they play it out is not because Aiden actually, like, it's a contrived situation, right? I hate when you write contrivance in to further the plot. It feels cheap. It feels dumb. It immediately makes me not believe in your plot, in your script. Here's the thing. And this got even worse. I even wrote, I'll tell you what I read in the movie. Aiden goes, well, if you're going to waste my time, I'm going to waste yours. And he does a stupid little dance. Again, contrived. She is pulling down the wallpaper because this dude had this wire stretched or whatever, and whatever. There's different places where there's spackle and stuff, and she's like, "Look, dude, just help me here." And he's like, "No, if you're going to waste my time, I'm going to waste yours." And he does a little dance, a little horsey dance or whatever in the middle, and he step, and then he goes and he finishes the dance, and he steps on the one hollow spot on the damn floor. That's how they find the secret compartment, which holds the damn box that they were looking for. Yeah, that was dumb. That was dumb. It was dumb. It was dumb, and it's stupid and contrived. It was contrived. There's no reason for him to do the dance. There's no reason for him to not believe her. There's no reason for him to not be helping her. The only reason is they couldn't think of a way to actually make them find the thing. They couldn't actually give them a means to reason out where the compartment was. So they did the stupid dance, and he finds it by luck. It is the equivalent in like a Scooby-Doo cartoon where Shaggy's like, well, Scoob, I guess, and he leans on something and it's the secret door, right? That was the level of writing that we got. I hated that. And that's where I started to lose hope. Like, I didn't mind the Hyde Park scene. I thought it was okay. I thought it was okay, and I thought it was reasonable that, someone might be filming Ellie because, oh my God, it's that lady that writes the spy books. Hold on, because everybody's got to film everything nowadays. And Britain does have a lot of CCTV, at least detective shows have told me that. So it all made sense, and I was like, okay. I can sort of get it. It's like a stupid National Treasure thing, and we're going to go from place to place and solve puzzles. But not really, but solve puzzles. But then they hit this. They did this stupid dance thing. He finds it by luck. Man, did I hate that. And then there's a fight scene. And the fight scenes are boring. I think I know why. So I actually thought about this because I'm like, well, you like fight scenes. Like, I mean, I grew up on them. That's what movies are nowadays anyway. So yeah, I like fight scenes typically in a movie, and I don't like these. And I thought about it for a little while, and I'm like, oh, I think the reason is there is no tension in the fight scenes. The fight scenes are there. They're almost just set pieces there to fill some time and make you remember that, oh my God, yes, we're watching an action movie. There's no real tension. You never actually get to a point in the fight where you're like, wow, how are they going to get out of this? It's just it's just, and then he punches this guy, and then a grenade lands next to him, and then he flies across the room, and then he punches the other guy. And that's it. And that's the whole fight scene. And I'm thinking of, well, okay, as opposed to what? And I'm like, go frickin' watch Indiana Jones movies. Go watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the scene with the fighting the Nazi guy on the airstrip, where the propeller is always in play, right? That's tension in a fight scene. Or in the truck where he's fighting the guy in the truck, and ultimately gets dragged underneath the truck. Again, there's tension there. There is a moment where you go, oh crap, he's going to win because the hero always wins. But there has to be a tension point where you go, well, how is Indy going to get out of that? And those movies did that so well. And this movie's just doesn't do it at all. It's just, yep, he punches a dude. Oh, he shot him. Yep, shot that guy. Right? There's never any tension. Have the grenade. There's a scene in this fight. There's a point in this fight scene where I think Ellie accidentally throws a grenade into where Aiden is. She's like holding it going, oh, and she throws it and it lands next to Aiden. Doesn't hurt him, of course, because not, right? Because again, it's a cartoony violence anyway. Blow him out the window, though. It just blows him across the room, and he makes some comment and it's supposed to be funny. Blow him out the window. Have him, right, grab onto some, whatever, at the last moment. One of these wires that was strung down, or the window ledge. Have Ellie have to run over and help him, but a guy grabs her leg or something. Like, have a moment where there's actually a question as to what happens next. As it stood, as soon as the fight scene started and the music cued, I was like, yep, got to catch up on my notes. I'll keep an eye out in case anything happens and just write my notes. And that's what I did. And I'm going to skip, there's a whole part about, there's this whole goofy part that went on way too long about him telling her to crush the heads of the guys that were laying unconscious in the hallway once he shot some guys in the hallway to make sure they don't get up. It was dumb. It's only there, again, so that you can reference it later, strangely enough, in the movie. But it's not worth even talking about. I'm just going to skip it to get to an actual part that I thought was pretty interesting, and we'll get to that in a second. I said I was going to skip it, but I'm not. I just want to take 2 minutes, and I apologize because this video is going to be way too long. At this rate, it's going to be longer than frickin' Argylle, which, please no. There's a scene after the fight in the apartment. Well, during it's sort of in between. There's 2 fights in the apartment. And he's like, okay, when I go out there, I need you to walk behind me. And when the guys are laying there, I need you to crush their heads. Just crush their heads with your foot. And she's like, no, that's crazy. These are people, and I'm a civilian, as far as she knows. He's like, no, it's just like the twist. You can do the twist, right? You just twist and then crush, twist and crush. And this goes on way too long. She protests. He gives her, keeps trying to tell her to crush her heads. It's not, it's not a funny scene. And it's one of those where you go, why are you doing this? Why is this a thing? Are you out of bullets? I mean, you're going to shoot them anyway. Shoot them again. Did you have an extra gun that you could give her? Now, that would have been a funny scene, right? Ellie walking around with a gun, trying to, maybe not take Aiden's ear off or that kind of thing, right? But no, he wants her to crush their heads. And I realize, and so there's no problem with the scene. It just doesn't make any sense. It is sort of contrived again, where you're like, dude, you don't have time for this. These guys are coming. You're over to 10-minute conversation about her crushing heads. Just hand her a pistol or a knife or whatever. Or don't do it at all because she's not going to do it. And it is contrived. And the reason why it's there is just so they can do the stupid callback at the end of the film. And though I originally gave the writer Jason Fuchs points for using Chekhov's gun very well, I'm taking points away. That's contrived. You don't get to contrive the scene and then call back to it and go, see how clever that was? No, it'd be like a street magician coming up to you and going, hey, pick a card, and you pull it. It's like, it's the 8 of spades. And you go, wow, that's genius. And he accidentally drops the deck and they're all 8 of spades. It's like, no, it's not genius anymore. The whole point of the callback is that it's not it's a little bit not unexpected, I suppose, but it makes sense, and it is I don't know, not contrived, not flippin'. You wrote a scene in there specifically so that you could call back to her crushing skulls with her boot. That's dumb. And I get it. It's all contrived because you're writing it. I understand that, but you got to make it seem natural. In contrast, the ice skating bullshit seemed natural. The callback. So there's a scene way back when I talked about it. I talked about the callbacks when she just mentions offhand to a fan who asked her a question that she didn't start writing until she ice skated, and they used that later. That's a good callback. That made sense. This one was absolutely contrived, and it was a little garbagey. That's all. And that it just drove me nuts because I sort of hated that scene, and now I know why. Done. Now I apologize because I said this part was going to be interesting. This is not the interesting part, but we're so close. We are so close to the interesting part. I swear to you. After the apartment scene, they go to a hotel. Right, they're sleeping it off a little bit. They've had a rough day. They almost got killed by. They found Bakunin's hideout. They found his stuff, his logbook. They almost got killed by bad guys. Not really, but Aiden almost got blown up by a grenade. Not really. And they did jump off a roof onto a thing. I actually did skip that scene because I'm like, don't want to talk about it. Done. But they're in the hotel. And at some point, he goes and takes a shower, or goes into the shower and starts running the shower. And in the shower scene, he starts to pull his phone. And I immediately said, okay, she's going to overhear him on the phone. He's going to be saying something stupid. She's going to misunderstand him and then run away. I mean, now you might not believe me. You might go, "Well, that's bullshit. You totally didn't guess that." I'm like, "Yes." As soon as he pulled, I swear to you, as soon as he pulls the phone, I'm like, here we go. It's the misunderstanding trope, which again is, but it's just you can see this one coming. As soon as he pulls out that phone, he's gonna be saying something as though he were the villain. And he does. He says, "Oh, yeah, I got her, and I'm going to bring her to you, and then we're done, because she's driving me nuts. I just want to pull a bullet in her head." Now, again, I don't know that any of that makes sense. How was she driving you nuts? She solved the Hyde Park thing? By leading you to Bakunin's apartment? By being right about the location of the compartment and the drop box, the lockbox? Is that the reason she's driving you nuts? Because, is the reason she's driving you nuts because she wouldn't stomp the heads? I don't know, but I think, and again, it's contrivance. It's contrivance. She wasn't driving him nuts. There actually wasn't that back and forth. They didn't really have that much of that back and forth. There was not that Harry Met Sally tension between those two or whatever, where they were literally driving each other nuts. There wasn't that. This whole conversation is just a contrivance, and what they're banking, the writer is banking on you to do is go, oh yes, in every rom-com buddy comedy, they drive each other nuts. So they must be driving each other nuts in this one. So that makes sense. Didn't make sense. They weren't having that kind of interaction. She had mostly done what he needed her to do and mostly gotten him to the right place. And they now have the stuff. So the real phone call would have gone, yeah, hey, we're on our way to you, but we need to rest up because we had a rough fight. Yeah, she's doing okay. Now she still doesn't know who she is. Done. That's the call, right? That's the real call. But they had to get Ellie out of the apartment. They had no way to do it, so they had to make a way to do it. And it was the old trope of, oh, you sound like the villain on the call. I mean, even then, he could have taken a walk to go get ice and made the call, and she wouldn't have heard him. But he literally did it in the open with the room right there. The door was open to the. It's a hotel room. It's this big, for crying out loud. That's when I always plot to kill my wife, when she's right next to me. It's like, okay, oh yeah, I'm so gonna poison her Wheaties. Hey, honey, how you doing? Like, what is that? So it was contrived, but it gets her out. So she immediately calls her mom, and then they arrange to meet. Done, right? Because she's scared now. She doesn't know who to trust. She can trust mom. You can always trust mom. And you head back. And so mom and dad are waiting for mom, who's the Schitt's Creek mom, is which is a good show, by the way. Was waiting for her. And so they're talking, and she's giving her the spiel, and mom doesn't really believe her. Are you sure, dear? Or you're just not off your meds, or whatever the hell she said to her. And then dad comes in, and dad is Bryan Cranston. And that actually, I was like, oh, okay, that's good. That's a good scene. That I almost didn't expect that. At that point, you immediately did what you're supposed to do in a flippin' movie, which is you put some tension into the scene. Now I'm wondering, what's going to happen? Do they, I mean, are they going to kill her? Are they going to take her? Is she going to get away? What the hell's going to happen? That is what you want to do. So dad's Bryan Cranston, and of course she's brought the logbook with her, Bakunin's logbook, which is encoded. And of course, Bryan Cranston wants to look at it, but of course, I can't make heads or tails of this, dear. And right, that whole back and forth that the mom and dad are doing. And I thought that was actually pretty cool. It actually, I'll say, surprised me a bit. It did. It surprised me a tiny bit. And I thought, oh, there you go. There's your twist. That was pretty clever. It's her mom and dad. Now, as we'll find out later, they're not her mom and dad. But that's a whole thing. But that is part of the whole tension of the scene is you've just subverted my expectations. I don't know what the frick is going on. And I want to see what happens next and how we get out of this scene. That was good. At that point, Aiden shows up, right? And it's a whole thing with, the mom. So you're like, is the mom in on it? Yes, she is. She holds a gun to Ellie's head. Aiden holds a gun to Bryan Cranston's head. It's a whole thing, right? And ultimately, Bryan Cranston shoots Ellie's mom, punches out what's his nuts, and then they escape. Now, again, at that point, Aiden has to know who these people are, right? He has to know that is. So it turns out Bryan Cranston, right, the dad, is the director of the directorate. I think the division. I'm sorry. I like director of the directorate. I think that's my I've now mentally changed the name of that place to the directorate. But yeah, Bryan Cranston's the boss, and he knows that the lady is a brain scientist who brainwashed Ellie, which we're going to get to in a minute. So spoilers, Ellie is a secret agent. Here's the thing. Why doesn't he shoot them in the head right then? Like, why do it would have taken literally 2 more seconds, even if they had a whole squad of goons within a second. You would have taken no more time than to turn around and go boop, and pop Bryan Cranston and boop, pop what is her actual Catherine O'Hara, and you'd have been done, and the movie's over. That's the problem. It's so funny because and this is dumb. I'm pulling gamer bullshit into this. When you run a game, like a D&D game or whatever, you actually have to pay attention to some of this stuff because the players aren't going to let Bryan Cranston get out of that scene alive. Oh, hey, the bad guy is there, and you just punched him out, and you shot his evil doctor sidekick, and she's unconscious and he's unconscious. Goons are coming. What are you going to do? And they would go, we shoot him in the head, and then we run. And I'd be like, oh, well, there's the big bad guys are done. You can't, okay. Like, you have to think about that. You can't. So it's funny that writers don't. They just don't have to, because the characters are going to do whatever the hell they want them to do. And in this case, they just run, and they should have just shot them. You know, or at least, I'll tell you what. So at least Aiden goes to shoot them, and Ellie stops him because they're her mom and dad, even though they're not. And she doesn't know, right? Like, she grabs a gun. What are you doing? Oh my God, right? You could have had a moment there, and maybe she gets all teary, and he goes, okay, right? It would have still been sort of dumb, because if you know who they are, you shoot them. I mean, he just told her to crush the heads of the mooks in the last scene. Why would you not take the 1 second to kill the big bad and the two big bads right there? My voice is a little rough, so probably the next time you see me for the last part of this, I'll have another shirt, because it'll be tomorrow. So I have it on very solid Hollywood authority that there was a tense discussion between Samuel L. Jackson and the writing staff and director of Argylle before one of the scenes, and Samuel L. Jackson was questioning them on the script and said, "Hey, what the hell? What is going on with this scene? What am I doing in this scene?" And the writers were like, "Well, you're watching the Lakers?" And he's like, "Watching the Lakers? What's my motivation?" And they were like, You want them to win? He huffed and was not convinced. And so they took the check, and they wrote out the check, and they pushed it over the table. And he looked. You know what? Get them motherfucking Lakers on that motherfucking screen. At least that's how I imagine it went, because otherwise I'm not sure why Samuel L. Jackson is in this movie at all. I am just not sure. I cannot imagine that you said, hey, I got this great part that has like 30 lines. He delivers like one exposition or one expository scene, and then that's what we got. You know what? Let's pick Samuel L. Jackson. Was the goal to just spend money? Was that it? Was the budget too small? And they just... There you go. If I ever become a trillionaire or something, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a movie. And all the main parts are going to be like totally unknowns. But every extra and every bit part is going to be some blockbuster Hollywood actor. like you'll be having... and make it a real, I would try to make it a really good flick that you're continuously being distracted by, Ryan Reynolds walks by and Samuel L. Jackson is the waiter. And no, I just don't get it. Why is he in this movie other than to put him on the poster, which is exactly why he's in the movie. So they're in France. Samuel L. Jackson is pulling his best Jean-Luc Picard in the vineyard. Right, he's doing the vineyard thing as an old, elderly statesman spy. And he's here largely to deliver the wise, philosophical, but mostly meaningless, ineffectual exposition to Ellie, and then give the big reveal. So that's what he was doing in the scene. So he goes on about grapes and how, a grape you can't tell until you know what it's been through, and digging up vases, and, archaeology, because you have to sometimes the past doesn't get fully buried or something like that. But what his actual purpose is he's there to reveal that Ellie is actually Rachel Kyle, and that all this, she got brainwashed by the bad guys to think that she was Ellie and to think that they were her parents. And all this stuff is her memories bubbling up to the surface, right? Argylle, see, right? She's Argylle. Argylle. Get it, guys? Get it? And I got it, but I had no more Fuchs to give by that point. Get it, guys? It was dumb when I did it too, by the way. So literally, the master file was gotten. That is all true. Ellie was in some kind of accident when she went to meet Bakunin. And the bad guys found her, brainwashed her, and then brainwashed her in such a way that she forgot who she was, but could still have these memories that came up to then find where this guy is, to find the master file. Like, so they're getting her to write the books. They prompt her in some fashion to write these books so that they will find the master file. That's the whole goal. So the whole plan was, hey, we've captured the best agent that these guys have. They're right, or it's really their agent, because as it turns out, she was working both sides. But don't worry about that. Here's where I sort of totally shattered watching Argylle. And I already was, again, don't get me wrong, I didn't like this movie. It's obvious by now. The thing is, at first you're like, oh, that's okay, I get it. That's sort of cool, right? She is the super spy. For poor mousy Ellie with all her anxieties, she was programmed that way by Catherine O'Hara and by Bryan Cranston, right? To be this mousy author, and then she would slowly bring out the secrets to find all their dirty laundry. So that took 5 years. Let's understand something. This plan, presumably, they sat down and thought of this plan and said, yeah, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. It depends. Is she going to Stephen King it or George R.R. Martin it? like that book might never come out. So based on how prolific an author she is, we're either going to get the master file in 3 years or never. And I'm like, that is the plan? That's the best freaking plan that you had? You can't track this guy down. What's the point of having a secret spy organization that has tapped into all the shit in the world if you can't find the one guy? Like that, it just stopped making any sense, even inside of its own little bubble. And I sort of didn't mind the whole, here's real life, here's Henry Cavill, here's real life, here's John Cena, right? That whole mix was okay. It's not a bad concept, but it totally breaks down when you realize that the bad guys had the secret special agent for 5 years because they were her parents. And that the plan was to just wait it out for 5 years and hope that she happened to write a book, and that nothing happened to, like, nothing else got it, like, that she actually wasn't creative. That's the funny part. Like, the whole part is like, yeah, Ellie, you suck as a writer. This is all just your memories. And we're going to hope that you don't actually get a creative spark, because God forbid you might change the damn narrative and then we know nothing about what's going on. And here's the thing. I don't know that the plan even worked, because I think everything that you've seen up to this point falls apart once he says, these are your memories. Samuel L. Jackson goes, no, Rachel, these are actually your memories. You weren't making that shit up. This is your memories. And then you go, well, wait a minute. If these are the memories, then when she goes to meet Bakunin, Wyatt, aka Aiden, was there because he's John Cena. He's the insert. Sam Rockwell and John Cena. That's how she mentally pictured him in her magical visions there. So he saw the inside of the phone. He's the one. What? How is that a thing? He didn't know then the phone had the chip in it. He didn't know he could go and look up the dissect database to find the satellites. He didn't know any of this because he was either there or her memories are shit because she didn't remember it right. At that point, I was sort of done because I'm like, none of this makes any sense anymore. Because then you go all the way back to the train and go, well, they were going to kill her on the train. Why are they going to kill her? It makes no sense. If they need her to write, either they need her to write the stuff to get the master file, or else they don't care if they get the master file. If you're going to send a whole host of assassins to kill her, then you could have just cut her throat in her sleep when she was sleeping at mom's house because she came to visit for Christmas. What? Yeah, see, at that point, they just took everything they've done and said, nah, none of it matters. It was all, haha, we just did it to make a series of points in the movie that happened. Like, none of it. I'm sorry, I'm training my family. Professional shit here. At that point, I sort of jumped. I was on the ledge for a long time, and at that point, I jumped because I thought that's a dumb plan. You really wanted to wait 5 years for this thing, and you either need Ellie or you don't need her. And if you need her, then why are you trying to kill her? If you don't need her, you could have killed her 5 years ago. You captured her and brainwashed her, so she was presumably under your control for a considerable period of time. And the other thing which sort of makes the plot, the whole, everything you've seen fall apart, is the fact that there is nothing that Ellie is doing that actually requires her. Unless you make the leap that she literally was like the only super genius spy and that only she can figure out all the breadcrumbs that have been left, there is nothing you need Ellie for. Now, we'll get to this in 1 minute, because there is one thing that they sort of jam in there that they need. A contrivance. All that she did, she doesn't have any singular piece of knowledge that makes her presence, life, whatever, required. She figures out the Hyde Park thing. She goes to Bakunin's place. They Scooby-Doo stumble into the hidden compartment. Like, that could have been anybody. And in fact, why wasn't it? It's been 5 years. You guys could not have figured this out. Maybe Aiden couldn't figure it out because he seems to be sort of a shitty spy except for the fighting stuff. But the fact of the matter is, the division, the directorate, whatever the hell they're called, should have been figuring this out. They easily could have, like, that, again, strikes me as you could have figured this out. There is nothing that Ellie has. She has no singular piece of information. No hidden thing encoded in her brain that Bakunin gave her. No Johnny Mnemonic chip, right? She has nothing that makes her, she just figured it out. So we have the two laziest spy groups fighting over Ellie because she's the only one that can actually think anything to figure anything. Makes no sense. And as soon as you catch the reveal, it's funny because it's, and I'm going on way too long about this. I apologize. But it drove me a little nuts because at a cursory glance, it's clever. Oh my God, that's so clever. Ha ha ha. She's Argylle. I get it. Argylle, right? So clever. And then you go, wait a minute. But you had rules before. and then you just made all of that mean nothing. So I have to assume that it's not her memories, that she's just delusionally making up stuff that happens to be correct. Because if it was her memories, why doesn't Sam Rockwell know about the chip, and why didn't he go pursue Bakunin ahead of time? I absolutely didn't quite understand what they were going for at that point. But you get the reveal. She still doesn't believe it. Aiden and her spar so that he's going to punch her, and then she does her muscle memory thing. So now she's at least a little bit back, but she's not quite all the way back. And the logbook has been given to Samuel L. Jackson, and he can decode it, so he decodes it. And again, this whole movie is avoided if the spy agencies actually did anything. Because again, right, Bakunin even mentions to Aiden or whomever that the division would have paid 3 times as much for the file. Like, he threatens him with it. So presumably he knows about them. Isn't it not likely they know about him? Is it not likely that they've dealt in the past? Could they not have made that offer and then shot Bakunin or got him or whatever, and then tracked down his apartment and then found the lockbox and then blah, blah, right, found the logbook, and the logbook is encoded and they give it a name, whatever the encoding is. But the answer then is, well, but if everybody knows how he encoded the book, once they see it, then it's just a matter of time. Presumably like a matter of 10 minutes, because Samuel L. Jackson decoded that pretty darn quick. So yeah, there was a reveal. It was fine. It totally ruined, it killed everything that came before, was now null and void. So, as it turns out, the logbook says that the master file is with the secret keeper, who is this lady out in the Arabian desert that presumably keeps secrets. She's like the escrow for spy shit. Now, again, are you telling me that no one knows about her? They must, because they know where to go. I mean, unless Bakunin's logbook said where to go. But they must know about her, right? I think everybody vaguely thinks, it sounds like they all know who she is. But then again, can it be a surprise that maybe the master file is there? And of course, the whole catch is, but she'll only give it to Ellie, because that's how the secret keeper works. So we do need Ellie for that. I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. You didn't need Ellie at all. The 5-year plan was dumb when the Russians did it. It's dumb today. It was dumb when Argylle did it. Okay. And I wrote it down several times. 5 freaking years, 5 years. Oh my God. Yeah. So 5 years. So we're getting to the home stretch, thankfully, and I don't know how much longer this review goes on, because I've sort of reviewed it already. It's sort of turned into a weird review plot synopsis. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. You can, if you've stayed with me this long, thank you. I appreciate you. What the hell's wrong with you? So they go to the secret palace. Aiden and Ellie. Ellie is now dressed up in the gold Dua Lipa dress. I am, and Dua Lipa wore it better, because it's hard. That's hard to beat. But it's all good. They dance the whirly bird, of course, because we've got to go back to that. Um, and now they're romantic. You know, they were romantically involved because he's told her all about and right, and that's fine, whatever. I don't at this point. I don't care, and no one should. And they go, and of course they get called up to the secret keeper's place, but only Ella, because she'll only deal with Ellie, with Rachel Kyle. So she'll only deal with. I'm going to still call her Ellie because that's sort of what she was the whole time. She'll only deal with Ellie because that's who the secret keeper knows. So she goes up. There's this little exchange where the secret keeper's like, "Here's your master file, but wow, you really played the mousy writer really well for 5 years. So who are you for real?" Ellie gets her big girl panties on and swears at her a little bit and gives a little bit. She's like, right, she's not really Argylle. She is still on this weird, right? She's still Ellie, but she has a little bit of the memories of the secret agent she is. So she bucks up, swears at the secret keeper a little bit, which is enough, presumably, to it's funny because the secret keeper at once goes, "You see, I'm wonderful at detecting lies, and I didn't detect one when you were playing your mousy writer. So who really are you?" As though she's not going to give her the thing. But then Ellie lies and effectively goes, "Yeah, well, I'm a badass, and you should give me the thing." And she goes, "Oh, good enough." And even though she's not fully Argylle yet, right? She just looks over. Henry Cavill gives her some little bit of encouragement, and she sort of sucks it up, and then gives the nasty talk, and that's enough for the secret keeper, who doesn't detect a lie now. So be it. So they have the thing, but then the division shows up, right? And then there's a scene where they're all having tea together. So they're not allowed to have weapons because this is the secret keeper's palace. So they do all know about the secret keeper, presumably. Which again, it would surprise me. Like if I'm the division, I go, "Look, secret keeper, you have two choices. One is to hand us this file you have, if you have it, and the second is we nuke this place from orbit because or whatever, or send 1,000 Apaches, or." But that's not how the division presumably works. Presumably they've done atrocities elsewhere. One little palace destroyed in the Arabian desert is not going to matter. But they follow the rules. So they're all there. Catherine O'Hara is there telling Ellie / Argylle, and this is all very tiresome, that she was the one, the division sent her after Bakunin, and she now remembers having shot Bakunin after getting the master file. Or no, not getting the master file, because he sent it away. So he's told her where she sent it. She shoots him, then the whole place explodes. She's blown out the window into the Thames, and that's where the division then found her and picked her up. But she was working for the bad guys. So that's where you get the whole, oh my God, is she evil? Or was she good? And that's going to drive literally the next sort of section. They knock everyone out and drag them to Division HQ. Division HQ happens to be in an oil tanker somewhere in the ocean. And that's where we end up. And that's where now we are in the home stretch, right? So it's all set up. The agents are captured. They're on Division HQ, which is an oil tanker. Ellie now realizes that she was Argylle, and she was actually working for the bad guys, killing Bakunin. Once, presumably, Agent Aiden there, presumably had Bakunin make the master file or hack the master file, but then the division actually sent Ellie / Argylle to go kill him and get the file. She failed. She did kill him, but she didn't get the file. And that's sort of where we end up. So now there's the question of, will she, won't she? Is she evil or is she good? Um, and sure, right? By this time, I think I'm a little bit done. I want it to end, but I want to at least see how they do it. Uh, and that's yeah, and that's where I'm. So home stretch. I swear to you, we're almost done. This has lasted too long. I apologize if you're still here. Thank you, and that's cool. But yeah, I probably could have popped out a 15-minute review, and that would have been way better. Um, I don't know why I felt I had to go through the whole thing, but I sort of weirdly felt that I needed to go through the whole thing, probably to justify the fact that I wrote 10 pages of goddamn notes on it. And I'm like, I'm using these notes, goddamn it, I'm using these notes. I don't want to do a whole synopsis of this last set of scenes. I want to do it as quick as possible, right? So let's do that, and then I'm going to stop and talk about what I consider to be the sins, sort of the writing of the movie, and and how those are absolutely shown here in this last set of scenes. So remember that everybody is captured. The bad guys have the master file, and Aiden's being tortured to find the location of Samuel L. Jackson. And Bryan Cranston is trying to turn Ellie, saying, "Hey, you were our best agent. We want you back in the fold. Come on back, Agent Argylle." And right, that whole thing. You're really evil. You should stay being evil. You're good at evil. Do evil. So now keep in mind, at this point, the bad guys have won. They have the master file. They have Ellie, who either is now the bad guy or is now not a bad guy. In any case, they were planning to kill her before. Why not just pop her in the head now? You have the file. You have the agent. You have Agent Aiden. You have Agent Argylle / Ellie. You have the master file. Kill them. Burn the thing. You're done. The bodies dump into the ocean. By the way, the Division HQ is an oil tank. Why? Because they need to do an oil skating scene, which we'll get to in a minute. So you're done. You've won. Just win the damn game. Press the button. Bam, we're out. And then go drive off into the sunset in your oil tanker because you've won the game. There's no reason to get Samuel L. Jackson. You've been waiting for this for 5 years. There literally is no reason. He's not been a threat for 5 years. He's only a threat. We already know they're only a threat if Ellie's alive. Kill Ellie. Done. But they're not going to do that because we need to make this movie go on for another 40 minutes or something. So we're going to do that. And so she agrees to help Bryan Cranston get the information out of Agent Aiden. Agent Aiden is tortured. Of course, he's all beaten up. And she's like, oh, come on, you can tell me where he is and I'll make it easy on y'all. If you don't tell me where he is, I'm going to kill him slowly. That kind of thing, right? And Aiden is like, look, I know there's good in you. Ellie, I've watched you for 5 years from afar, and I know Ellie's still in there, and she is good, and you are ultimately good, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing. And that pisses off our Rachel, and she pulls a gun, bam, pops him in the chest. Oh, and he's dead, and you're like, wow, she really is evil. Wow, that's a twist. I mean, obviously she's not. He does shoot him in the chest. Now remember, way back at the very beginning, when they were at the Greek club, the very first scene, the intro scene, her tech buddy Kira got killed by getting shot in the heart. Well, as it turns out, there is a spot, theoretically, in that area that you can be shot and it will pass through nothing vital. Now, I don't know exactly where that spot is or if it even exists. I didn't look it up. I don't care enough. but she presumably can absolutely hit that spot because Ellie was looking it up because that's how she was going to bring Kira back in the books. In the books, a fan, sent her a letter talking about the vascular corridor and saying, hey, Ellie Conway, you can bring Kira back from the dead by having her have been shot in the vascular corridor. Ellie / Argylle now knows to do this, and so she shoots Aiden in the same spot. So now Aiden is going to wake up fine in a minute. Again, as you can be incredulous as you want at this point, none of it makes sense. Even if there is a vascular corridor, the fact that she hits it from any range and that the bullet doesn't bounce around or cause any other damage when it's in there, or hit or tumble, because some bullets will do. I don't know what they're using. Let's say they're not using a bullet that tumbles, fine. And doesn't create a hydrostatic shock wave, which just destroys the tissue in the heart or whatever. It's all fine. You're just going to have to roll with it. She shot him in the one spot in the heart that actually is not going to kill him, that he's going to be fine 5 minutes from now. Okay, sure. Done. So that's going to set us up for the rest of the scene on the boat. Just keep in mind that Aiden is fine. He was not just shot in the heart. He was shot in the safe part of the heart. Okay. So now the bad guys are convinced that Ellie is Rachel and Rachel is evil. And so now they're going to get her to help them track down, because they don't need Aiden, presumably. They could just track down Samuel L. Jackson just using what's in Ellie's super spy brain. So she goes and does her super spy stuff with them. In the meantime, Aiden's waking up, of course. But what she's really doing is she is using their mainframe to send the master file to Samuel L. Jackson. And of course, when they find him, she tells you, right? Oh, you found him. Good job, Agent Argylle. Good job, or Argylle, whatever. There's everybody has 18 names. And then she goes, but I just sent them the master file. And they go, nope, you had to have authorization. Sorry, that was dumb. And then, of course, she has to escape because they're going to kill her. So now she's loose on the boat. Aiden's loose on the boat because he escaped. They meet in the armory of the ship. And they, there's a little bit of a back and forth. And she convinces Aiden that she's good. And she actually shot him in the heart in the one spot that he could live. She tells him that whole thing. And done. That's fine, right? But they're now cornered in the armory. Now comes what I would call the climactic fight scene. It's not really, because this thing keeps going and going, and so it's hard to tell when the climax is and when it's never coming. So they're cornered outside the armory. They suit up in whatever gas mask and whole thing, and they toss out smoke grenades. And so there's all this smoke going around, and they're shooting with guns, and it's really a dance scene. Right? There's music. They shoot to the beat. They do the whirlybird, of course, because we can't not frickin' do the whirlybird. Why? Why is that a thing? Why? Anyway. Like, why did we did that? They did that 3 times in the movie, this dance move. I just don't understand what the obsession with the whirlybird is. I mean, I get it, because I'm sort of obsessed with it, too, in a negative way. But they're... Right? They seem to just want to do this. And so they're spinning with guns, and they're dancing with guns, and they're smiling. It's a whole goofy-ass scene. But again, there's no tension. There's not really a fight scene as much as it is a dance scene. All the bad guys just die once they get too close to them because they're dancing with all the bullets done. It's and it just strikes me as incredibly dumb. What I wrote here is... What I wrote when this scene is, I wrote, this is what happens when a team has no idea filter or designated asshole. So this is an aside. I apologize. So I'm going to make this longer. There was a show, Killjoys, on, I think it was the Sci-Fi Network, but there was a show called Killjoys. It was about space bounty hunters. And the one guy was the one guy in the group that everybody hated. And at one point, someone talked to him and said, "Oh, yeah, and he go, and you're not as bad as I thought." And he goes, "Yeah, every organization needs a designated asshole." And I always took that to mean that every organization needs someone that says, "Nope, that's dumb. I'm going to hurt your feelings now. That's dumb. Stop it." And I sort of agree with that character in that show. I thought that was actually a very poignant moment. Every team needs someone that's willing to go, "Hey guys, your freaking stupid gunfight dance smoke scene with music pumping in the background is stupid. Please stop it." This movie did not have that. They're just like, "Oh, this dance scene's going to be so cool. I can't wait for them to do the whirly bird with guns." And it's like, please stop it. I was very dumb, and very upset about, not upset, but just tired. I was tired at that point. And then here's the worst part. That's not the end. That doesn't finish it. That's not the climax. Now they get chased out of there, and they're down in the basement being chased by the evil lieutenant who's on screen for like 10 minutes. And there's a gunfight, and they're down in the basement, and the oil tanks are there, and they're dumping because they're getting hit with bullets, so that oil is pouring all over the floor. And the heroes again are cornered by the bad guys. But the bad guys realize, shit, there's crude oil everywhere on the floor. Maybe we shouldn't be firing sparky guns everywhere. Maybe that's going to cause a fire from a ricochet. Maybe we're going to have to pull knives. So the bad guys all stumble out on the oil because it's slick. And Ellie / Argylle / whoever the hell she is remembers that she used to skate, because that's one of the memories that she had, was the skating accident, which you recall from the very first second scene, that she had a skating accident. So she attaches knives to her boots and then goes out and ice skates and kills all the bad guys. And again, you just had a dramatic dance fight scene, but wasn't dramatic. But you just had a music pumping fight scene where they danced. Now you just go straight into another music fight scene where she skates. It's the same scene, really, if you think about it. It's the same thing. It's the same vibe. It has the same tone. It's silly. It's over the top. She's ice skating with her bayoneted gun and just smacking these guys and stabbing, and they don't do anything. They don't stand a chance. No one's injured. There's no point at which someone goes after Aiden and someone has to sit. Nothing happens in this fight scene. It is just a set piece for her to skate around, and you're supposed to say, "Oh my God, that's so funny. She's skating and killing." And the whole thing culminates in her doing a spin, right? A skating spin, a salchow or something, and shooting the gun, even though, doesn't that cause sparks and kill them all in a fiery conflagration? Oof, okay. Nope, it doesn't. They win. They go to upload the code. They can't. They need Bryan Cranston's eyes. Bryan Cranston shows up, has them at gunpoint, gonna kill them, but the cat saves them. The cat jumps out. He hates Bryan Cranston for some reason. He literally scratches his eyes out. Done. I'm not even going to talk about that more than that. But his eyes are ruined. The cat has ruined the movie. Oh well. But they can go up on deck and transmit it via the satellite. So the heroes are up on deck. They're going to transmit the code. to Samuel L. Jackson, who's still watching the Lakers, and they start to transmit, but then all of a sudden, Catherine O'Hara, the mother from Schitt's Creek, comes up with a music box, which again, I think we've seen earlier in the movie because they always call back, and that's fine. And the music box, and she says some stuff, and we get all Manchurian Candidate, because presumably Ellie is programmed to go all Manchurian Candidate if Catherine O'Hara is carrying the music box and winding it up and saying the magic words. So now Catherine O'Hara has mind-controlled Ellie. Ellie's beating the shit out of Aiden, and she's going to kill him because she's that good and he's that bad. Absolutely, she fights right. There's a whole thing. It lasts forever. And she has him down on the ground, and she's going to do the thing where she crushes his head. So we're calling back to the head crushing scene. That's the whole reason they had that scene, was to call back. The only reason to have the scene where they had it was so that you could call back to this moment and go, wow, that is so clever. They called back earlier. And then someone shoots Catherine O'Hara in the head. And it's Kira back from the original scene. She's back because she was shot in the heart in the vascular corridor. She really wasn't dead. She was alive the whole time, guys. And she's the one who sent Ellie the whole idea because she was the fan, the reader. Oh, my God, so clever. Movie's over. Thank God I made it through. I literally said, so what I wrote at the end, so this just keeps getting worse and worse. It was bad and just overstayed its welcome and managed to keep overstaying its welcome. And then, and at some point made you wonder, why did I even let this guy in my house? He's the uncle that won't go home. And you're like, you're giving him all the clues, but it just kept going. That boat scene kept going. And every fight scene was way longer than it needed to be. And there just was another one after another one, and then this third one. And they all were so long. And finally at the end, I said, fuck me, this is terrible. My head hurts. I don't like this timeline. So that was my ending comments. Fuck me, this is terrible. My head hurts. I don't like this timeline. So that was Argylle. Let's quickly talk about what I think the sins are and how they absolutely pile on this last set of scenes here. So I think spectacle versus tension is my first sin. One of the main sins that this gets wrong, especially in its fight scenes, primarily and absolutely in its fight scenes. The fight scenes are boring. Why? Because they mistake spectacle for tension. Fight scenes need to have a point of tension. There needs to be something where you go, oh, what's going to happen there, right? No one ever grabs Ellie's leg. No one ever has Aiden and they're going to drill him with right, or whatever. And there's never a point where you go, well, how is she going to be saved? The only point where that happens is literally the very last scene. Literally the last scene when Agent Argylle is beating the shit out of Aiden. And she's got him on the ground and she's going to twist and stomp his head. And that scene, the tension is immediately bled out. You can't have it. We can't release it in some way that makes sense. Nope. It has to be a deus ex machina by having a throwaway character from the beginning of the show up and shoot the bad guy in the head and go, haha, I was alive all along. And you're like, okay. All right. Yes, that's how this movie has gone, so I don't expect anything different. But the fight scenes lack tension, and they mistake spectacle for tension. That is, and I've always wondered I've wondered recently, and this is a total aside, so I'm sorry if this is your first time watching any video. I cannot help but go on tangents. I apologize. If movies aren't emulating A, worse movies, but B, video games. Like video games used to emulate movies. And I'm wondering if we haven't reached a point where enough folks have played enough video games and they're now writing movies that we don't have now movies emulating video games in some fashion. Where the problem is that combat doesn't have to have a point in a video game because the point is your interactivity. So the combats in a video game don't need a point. They can just happen because that gives you a way to interact with the game. The interaction is the point. So you can just have spectacle. There doesn't need to be tension in a video game fight. The tension is inherent. Can you do the thing? Will you dodge in time? Can you kill the bad guys? In a movie, we know you're going to kill the bad guys. That is already done. You have plot armor. Everybody in the damn movie has plot armor. We know that. So the tension is setting up a point in the fight where you go, well, how exactly do they get out of this one this time? Because it doesn't look like they can. There is not a fight scene in this movie that ever does that until the very end, and then the answer is, oh yeah, dumb shit. Done. And scene. Right? That's it. They just go, yep, throwaway character comes back, shoots the lady in the head, and we are done. Good job, guys. Sign the checks. We're out. That's it. So, I think that's the first sin. Spectacle versus tension. Segging very closely with that is pointless scenes, and it overstays its welcome. I think there's a lot of scenes that are in here solely to make callbacks, to make cheap callbacks. There are scenes in here that just mimic other scenes. Like, I thought the oil fight scene in the oil was pointless. There's no point to have that fight when you just had the other fight. And again, I think that's one of the sins. They didn't. The authors of this movie and the director did not go, no, why is that fight scene here? It doesn't do anything to the plot. It's like having a 6-year-old write the story. And then a teddy bear showed up, and then the teddy bear gave me ice cream, and then I ate the ice cream, and then the ice cream was good, and then we played on the swings. There's no. It's just a bunch of and thens, and the ship was absolutely that. And then what happened? And then what happened? And then what happened? And again, that's a very video game sort of plot. That's a video game way to structure a plot. Because again, you don't have to be super clever because the interactivity is the point. And I think that's part of the problem here. And it definitely overstayed its welcome. I was done. There was a point, right? That boat scene could have been half the length with one plot twist, and you could have gotten everything out of it that you did get out of it, which is a low bar, mind you. So definitely overstayed its welcome. Like this review, it overstayed its welcome. It ignores its own goddamn rules. The whole reveal with Ellie. So, time out. I'm going to back up. So I'm going to mulligan that. It ignores its own rules. The whole reason that the skating fight scene was set up was that the bad guys recognized that if they shot guns with the oil in the basement, they would all die in a fire. So they go, pull their knives, guys, and we're going to go in and get them. And they sort of slide, and they're hard to... And then she goes and does her thing because they can't shoot guns. But because this movie can't figure out that it made up a rule and can't follow them, Ellie goes, and she didn't even need to do... It was needless. She goes and she does the skating thing, and she's meleeing and killing everybody with her bayoneted rifle. She is kicking their asses. But at the end, because this movie can't not have a dumb spectacle in the place of an actual plot or a fight scene, she does like a little, I'm going to call it a salchow, even if it isn't, but she does a little spinny salchow where she goes down and spins faster and faster and shoots her gun to ultimately kill all of them, thus causing a giant fire which kills everybody on the boat, right? No, because the movie can't follow its own rules. And that's the whole problem, my problem with the big reveal. My problem with the big reveal that she's Argylle, which you sort of knew, you knew it was going to happen. But when you do get that reveal and you actually reflect back on the rest of the movie, you go, oh, then none of this made sense. Samuel L. Jackson said to her, "These are your memories." And I'm like, they can't be, because if they're her memories, then Aiden knows more than he said he knew. Then they didn't need Ellie to do almost anything. They already knew what was happening. They didn't need her to do the Hyde Park. Now, maybe it was just, well, we just want to jog her memory so that we just want her to become Argylle again. So we have to take her to all these places we already know she's been, and we already know what she's been doing. Maybe that was it, and I'm overthinking it. But and the same thing. You don't need Ellie. The Division could have killed her 5 years ago. They could have killed her. But maybe they want her because she's such a good spy. But you could have killed her. And they tried to kill her several times. Even they know who she is, and they know what she is capable of or not capable of. And the first time she meets Aiden, the Division's trying to kill her. It makes no sense. It doesn't follow its own rules. The oil scene is like a little compression of that. But the whole movie, once you think about it, you go, yeah, I'm not sure exactly who was trying to accomplish what, when. And part of that is just the fact that the purpose of this movie is not to have a it's spectacle. It's not to have a well thought out or a plot or even be funny or whatever. It's literally just to go from spectacle to spectacle, and you're supposed to go along for the ride because it follows it. It looks like it's a movie because it looks like there's a clever plot. This movie wants to be, on one hand, Beavis and Butthead, but yet a Nobel laureate scientist, like at the same time. Like it wants you to think it's clever, but wants to hide behind the fact that, well, it's not, it's a comedy a little bit. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't make it, right? It doesn't get there ever. I said, dramatic, suspenseful, exciting, or funny, you've got to deliver on one. You've got to deliver on one of those. You can't be an action comedy spy thriller and yet deliver on absolutely none of those aspects. It didn't deliver on the spy thriller. It didn't deliver on the comedy. It doesn't deliver on the action. It did not deliver. You got to pick one or multiple. You don't have to just pick one. There are movies which have done both. Bullet Train, for Christ's sake. If you want a good sort of action comedy thriller, watch Bullet Train. Done. I've just actually saved you. I have made your movie night because you don't have to watch Argylle. You could watch Bullet Train, and you got a better experience. Watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. Done. Oh, you've got a little bit a dramatic, sappy, not dramatic, but has that emotionally sort of touching. You have action. You have a little bit of I'm gonna say thriller, but you have a little bit of a sci-fi plot there. In a movie that's about Asian generational trauma, it is, and I know nothing about any of that. What a great movie! Watch Everything Everywhere All at Once instead. Like watch Indiana Jones again. Watch any of them old ones, please. Just watch the old ones. Watch those. If you want fight scenes with tension, there you go. I have made your movie night. Those are my recommendations instead of Argylle. My last. And I said 4 sins. My last sin is contrivance and callbacks versus clever, right? I think it is laudable that the writer, Jason Fuchs, indeed, everything in this movie was a callback. Like everything in this movie that you saw and that they did was indeed shown earlier. So nothing came out of the blue. So I'll give him that much. Having said that, most of the time that was done, it was contrived as shit. It was awfully contrived. The ice skating thing, I'll give him. That was actually good. But the whole "I'm going to crush your skull" thing, that was hideously contrived. There's no reason to have that conversation when Aiden and Ellie had that conversation. The only reason it exists is so they can be right there at that point in time, at the end of the movie, right before Catherine O'Hara gets shot by Kira, to have that one moment. It's a contrivance. So it loses a lot of its value, the callbacks, when you go, yeah, I mean, even the Argylle thing. I mean, you could have called the movie Orange and had her name be, Orlando Range, right? And go, see, it's Orange. Get it? Ha ha ha, right? It's Argylle. Like, there's no, it's not clever. It doesn't give you that, that was cool moment, because you're just shoehorning that shit in there. Callbacks are best when you go, oh, right. Yes, you know what? It's like a mystery. The whole point of a mystery is that you didn't figure it out, because you probably don't figure it out, but you thought and maybe you could have, maybe you couldn't. But it's supposed to give you that moment. It's supposed to have just been there enough that you go, oh, crap. You're absolutely right. I remember that. I should have seen that coming. None of this is that. None of this is that. A lot of it leaves you when you're there in the moment, when the first thing you're going, why are they having this conversation? Why is this happening? And then later you go, oh, it's happening because they needed to do this other thing later on in the movie. So contrivance. So much of the movie is just contrived to try to invoke that feeling that you should have known better. But ultimately you were just like, what the hell are they doing? And then you're like, oh, okay, now I see what they're doing. And that starts from the very beginning. Why is the stupid, lewd dance move named the Whirlybird? So that they can make the stupid ass pun. That's it. That's the whole reason. There's no other reason to even have that dance in the movie 3 times. I mean, there's no reason. My review of Argylle is, don't watch it. It's not worth it. There are 1,000 better movies. Absolutely 100%. Watch a Hitchcock flick. Watch Indiana Jones. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Watch Bullet Train. Go watch The Goonies again. I don't know. There's 1,000 movies that can give you... And watch any James Bond flick. It has all the same stupid tropes. And especially an old James Bond flick, for Christ's sake. Watch an old James Bond flick, and even though a James Bond flick primarily are trying to be funny, it would do way better. And you'll actually watch that and go, somehow, like, Moonraker is a better send-up of James Bond flicks than an actual send-up of James Bond flicks, which is what Argylle was trying to be. It literally is. Like, Moonraker is a better spoof on James Bond, and it just is a James Bond flick. So, absolutely, there's 1,000 better movies. JJ, I hope you enjoyed it. Everyone else, if you stuck around, thank you. I appreciate your indulging me, but I am done with Argylle.